Welcome, I'm Nina Gryphon, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel. Today we'll talk about the astrology of the first week of June 2024. First off, I wanted to say thank you to all of my patrons. I appreciate all of your support. If you would like to become a patron and get my monthly Magical Elections ebook, which is available at the highest tier, the Magus tier, you can go to patreon.com/Nina Gryphon. This ebook teaches you how and when to make astrological talismans each month at the optimal astrological times. The first week of June is a highly active astrological week. June 1st, Jupiter has his morning rise at 1 Gemini. After a conjunction with the Sun, a planet will eventually emerge out of the Sun's beams so that the planet is visible again. This moment is known as phases, which in Greek means an appearance. So Jupiter now emerges as an oriental or morning planet rising before the Sun. Emergence from the rays is a moment of great power for a planet after being purified, energized, and reborn during its conjunction with the Sun. The alchemical texts speak extensively of resurrection, which they often depict as a phoenix arising from its own ashes, or a rejuvenated king arising from his own tomb. It is no coincidence that both the phoenix and the king are associated with light and the sun, pointing to the importance of the solar synodic cycle for any planet. Here are the key themes for Jupiter emerging from the sun's beams. Jupiter's morning rise is about visibility and revelation of wisdom and the truth, whereas Jupiter going under the beams suggests hidden knowledge and secret teachings, because Jupiter is the guru or spiritual teacher, as well as the personification of wisdom itself. The moment of Jupiter emerging from the beams suggests knowledge that was previously concealed that is now emerging into full awareness. Remember that symbols and metaphors are used to teach spiritual truths because they convey several messages at once, which may not be easy to describe in words. We may have spent the past month or so unable to see to the heart of things, and only now is the true meaning of things becoming clear. Jupiter rises in the Pleiades constellation now, which is a group of 7 stars that are recognized by cultures the world over. For example, the car maker Subaru is named after the Japanese name for the Pleiades, and the Subaru logo depicts the stars of the Pleiades. The Sun-Jupiter conjunction occurred in the Pleiades last month, and the myth of the Pleiades will give the Sun-Jupiter cycle some of its key themes. In one major myth, the Pleiades are girls and the victims of a metamorphosis. Orion the hunter broke into their home to catch them, and the girls, weeping, called upon Zeus for help. He changed them into doves and placed them in the sky, where they continue to weep, which is a reference to their rainy nature, as well as their blurry appearance. For this reason, this cycle may bring about rain, storms, and even floods, but also being rescued from dangerous circumstances through evacuation, exile, or banishment. In the outer world, Jupiter rules people at the high end of society, the wealthy and powerful, as well as religious figures. They may be coming back into public view at this time. Perhaps they had been concealed, ill, or disadvantaged in some manner, but now they are entering full view. The theme of rescuing or evacuation may apply due to Jupiter's emergence in the Pleiades, so someone may be rescued from threatened harm around this time. Symbolically, this mythology relates to emergence from the underworld. The underworld itself is represented by the planet's passage through the sun's beams. You may recall from last month's videos that the underworld is the place of unvarnished truth, where all our supports, helpers, and powers are stripped away. Very often in mythology, those who go to the underworld end up losing something there. For example, Persephone is abducted by Pluto to be his queen in the underworld, but because she eats pomegranate seeds there, she can never return to the world of the living for good, only for spring and summer, while in autumn and winter she lives underground. So Jupiter emerging into the light is like triumphant spring, represented by Persephone returning to the world. Note also that when someone returns from the underworld, the world of the living also changes. So when Persephone comes back from the underworld every year, we get spring. Similarly, Jupiter's return from the beams represents a change or shift happening in our world. June 2nd, Jupiter at 1 Gemini trines Pluto in Aquarius. This is a major aspect. Jupiter-Pluto aspects are always important since they represent the combination of an outer planet with a superior planet, which is guaranteed to mirror shifts in our collective world. These aspects may or may not show up for us on an individual level, but the collective is much more sensitive than any one individual to these types of transits. Pluto means the rich one, and this was the preferred name for him among the ancient Greeks, as it was considered more complimentary than calling him Hades. Jupiter also represents wealth and worldly power, so these two planets' cycle will relate to financial matters. We could see sudden moves in various markets around this time, for good or bad. Often, this combination indicates major power moves and power shifts, where a person, faction, or nation makes a bid for power to shift the balance of things. The current Jupiter-Pluto cycle began when Jupiter and Pluto conjoined 3 times in 2020 in Capricorn. This is their first aspect in air signs since their conjunction. They also made a sextile in May 2022. So very possibly we could see some kind of shift pertaining to the war in Ukraine, but generally we are looking at any changes anywhere in who wields power around this time. We may see this in the larger organizations that we deal with on a daily basis as well. June 3rd, Mercury enters Gemini. This is his diurnal domicile. Now Gemini, since it depicts 2 people, represents unity between people everywhere, whether it's the alchemical conjunctio or meeting of bodies, or more general social cohesion. Mercury in Gemini is the mediating element or the glue that brings diverse parts into one coherent whole. In esoteric Hermeticism, he is viewed as facilitating the fertilizing union of the sun and the moon. They are too different to combine of their own accord, so it requires Mercury as a mediator to bring cohesion between them. Mercury is often represented as the wind, the third invisible, shape-shifting element that mysteriously makes change happen, and in this case, brings elements together to create something greater than the sum of their parts. In this role, Mercury is necessary for the divine will to manifest in the earthly realm. This is one way to use Mercury passing through Gemini. He provides an opportunity to create connections between people and elements, and to start magical transformations and transfigurations of previously inert matter. June 4th, Mercury at 2 Gemini conjoins Jupiter. Here's Mercury's first opportunity in Gemini this year to create that alchemical transformation I just mentioned. This is a potentially transformative combination, since Jupiter signifies wisdom, and Mercury brings knowledge and skill. So Mercury conjoining Jupiter brings with it the opportunity to gain genuine spiritual insight. If you are a student of the Hermetic arts of alchemy, astrology, or magic, you may be able to attain the next level in your development at this time. Mercury, especially in Gemini, an air sign associated with breath and therefore speech, represents the power of the spoken word. These are not only the words used to communicate, but words and sound as the fundamental building blocks of the cosmos. This is linked to Mercury's connection to incantations, magic, and his counterpart, the Egyptian god Thoth, who rules magic and writing. In the beginning was the Word, by which the world was and is continually created, as the Gospel of John says, which is a powerful Hermetic statement. At the deepest level, Mercury combining with Jupiter is a moment when we have the wisdom, Jupiter, to experience or access the nature of the cosmos as it really is, getting beneath surface appearances. Hermes represents the mystery itself as well as the means of solving the mystery. Hermetics represents the human endeavor to engage with the mystery of existence, and the discipline of hermeneutics is the interpretation of important texts. Both are 2 sides of the same coin. The power of a thing or an act is in the meaning and the understanding, said Black Elk, a holy man of the Lakota people in the book Black Elk Speaks. In the external world, pursuing projects of education, communication, or business are all favored now. These are the applied powers of Mercury in the material realm in which we live our daily lives. Also on June 4th, Venus at 14 Gemini will conjoin the Sun in a superior conjunction. This is the moment of the greatest mystery between Venus and the Sun, the closing of one cycle and the beginning of another. The connection between these 2 planets is quite ancient. In ancient Mesopotamia, we see the story of the king and his consort who unite and separate, as do Venus and the Sun in their cycle. Venus represents the feminine principle and the Sun is masculine, so they describe the ongoing cosmic process of fertilization, creation, and separation or destruction. Venus experiences fertilization as well as strengthening and purification, as is always the case when the Sun conjoins a planet. The meaning of fertility is particularly associated with Venus when operating with the Sun in a way that we wouldn't see with Jupiter or another masculine planet conjoining the Sun. This conjunction occurs in Gemini, the domain of Mercury, So this is a particularly alchemical and potentially spiritualizing conjunction. All conjunctions can be said to create a third thing. In Gemini, the fruit of the union of Venus and the Sun is hermetic. So what is created is simultaneously a mystery and a key that unlocks a mystery. The remainder of their synodic cycle, from now until their next superior conjunction in early 2026, will be hermetic in nature. So we should keep this hermetic lens in mind as Venus and the Sun interact and exhibit various astronomical phenomena over the next year and a half. On the material or physical level, this is a moment of attraction and fertilization, especially in the mercurial realms of speech, learning, and commerce. June 6th, we have a new moon at 16 Gemini. This is a fascinating lunation ruled by Mercury, who is in his own sign in this chart. It's a highly mercurial lunation, which is bookended by Jupiter in early Gemini and Venus in late Gemini. Mercury conjoins Jupiter in this lunation, and they both trine Pluto in Aquarius. The theme of Mercury conjoining Jupiter, the opportunity for seeking wisdom through engaging with mystery, is really seated in this lunation, which is then perpetuated into the future. The presence of Pluto suggests the presence of some unchanging truth or power dynamic. Note that Saturn in Pisces makes an overcoming square to the lunation, suggesting some kind of grossness or density of matter that may prevent a full connection to the spiritual realm. The stellium in Gemini, including its ruler or dispositor Mercury, suggests a potential focus on hermetic things. In the material world, these are the realms of Mercury: business, speech, education, and so on. This is an exceptionally inventive lunation, and given that it happens just after the Sun-Venus conjunction, something very fertile and flourishing can emerge from this time, especially in the realm of ideas. Saturn squaring the Sun, Moon, and Venus suggests limitations or boundaries on this creativity, so there may be a painful reality check now that makes realization of these ideals more difficult. With Saturn in Pisces, we may be looking at limiting beliefs or orthodoxies that on the one hand can act as a locked door beyond which we cannot go right now, but Saturn could also be the rock against which a sprout has to push and therefore gain strength as part of its natural growth process. So Saturn is both a limitation and the opportunity to strengthen the budding new creation by stress testing it. In the mundane realm, Gemini governs the United States, so this lunation is particularly configured to events there. We could see the next couple of weeks as a struggle between an exploratory mindset and repression or orthodox or authoritarian thinking. Something wants to be born now, but it may be delayed or limited in its expression in some way. All the air signs here might be pointing to tensions in the realm of politics and other social structures, but also the spread and control of airborne diseases like the bird flu that's been infecting cattle herds in parts of the country. June 7th, Mercury has his morning set at 8 degrees Gemini. Here, it's Mercury's turn to enter the realm of the shades, and he has an established role here. Since Mercury is never more than about 30 degrees away from the Sun, he goes in and out of the beams more frequently than the superior planets. For this reason, one of the roles of Hermes in mythology is to be a psychopomp, the companion of souls who guides the newly dead into the underworld. Entering Hades is a regular journey for Hermes, and he's making that journey once again now. Hermes is a god who can freely roam everywhere, so often he's analogized to the air or the wind, to which no place is off limits. Therefore, he can go even into the realm of the dead with impunity. In that sense, he represents the human mind or imagination, before which no door is locked. In the esoteric sense, he represents the cosmic mind, which thinks or dreams the universe and is continually creating it via thinking or dreaming. Our focus now is best directed toward mystery, as well as via facing our deepest fears. Many people have a deep, even panic-inducing fear of death, for example, and Mercury under the beams may present an opportunity for us to face this fear by engaging with wisdom traditions around death and the after-death state. In the realm of the world, someone mercurial could go out of view now. It could be a person connected with academia or studies, or associated with business or communication. Whatever we view as the key now may seem to slip from our grasp, but in reality, we have an excellent opportunity to seize the mystery, and even if we do not solve it, we may view it in all of its glory. June 8th, Mars will enter Taurus. Mars changing signs is always important. He is the fastest of the superior planets, and his sign changes can be felt as much in the personal realm as in the collective. Mars now leaves his domicile Aries and goes directly into Taurus, the sign of his detriment. So this change is a great loss for Mars, experienced as a loss of dignity, the comfort of being in one's own realm, or loss of status. Despite this loss, or perhaps because of it, Mars can be quite dangerous at such times, as he may lash out like a cornered animal. So do not assume that Mars in detriment, even if it is ruled by Venus, will act any better than Mars in dignity. The last time we saw the same transit from Aries to Taurus for Mars was July 5th, 2022, and the time before that was January 7th, 2021. This year, Mars will only be in Taurus until July 20th, so we can see he's moving much faster than average. In the realm of myths, Mars moving from Aries to Taurus recalls the part of the story of Heracles, who, as his punishment for the murder of a man named Iphitus during a spell of madness, Heracles was told by the Delphic oracle that he needed to be purified. The oracle was so scandalized by Heracles' sin that it refused to answer him, upon which Heracles started to destroy the sanctuary and tried to seize the tripod of the Pythian oracle, claiming he would set up his own oracle somewhere else unless they gave him an answer. Apollo, who is the patron saint of the Pythian oracle, came down and began to fight Heracles, and Zeus had to intervene with a thunderbolt to separate them. Finally, the Pythian oracle provided Heracles the answer that he sought. He had to sell himself as a slave and serve one master for 3 years, and the money from the transaction was to be given as restitution to the father of Iphitus, whom Heracles had killed. Heracles submitted to the will of the gods and was bought by the queen Omphale, and during his period of enslavement, she required him to dress in women's clothes, where he had to learn to weave and spin like a woman. In a highly patriarchal society like that of ancient Greece, this was a humiliating punishment despite never involving any hard labor or physical torture. So Heracles went from martial behavior, the murder of Iphitus and the destruction of Delphi, to a subsequent feminization as punishment. So this is analogous to Mars leaving his own sign and entering the sign of Venus. Mars thus may not behave himself well in Aries, maybe it's a bit too much Mars, but in Taurus, he may lash out because he feels he is being unfairly treated and punished. June 8th, Venus at 19 Gemini squares Saturn in Pisces. This represents a conflict between the cold and life-denying energies of Saturn and the life-affirming and life-desiring nature of Venus. Venus represents life, and life will always find a way. Saturn represents limitations, and the ultimate limitation, death. Therefore, this aspect represents the meaning of life in the form of Venus and Saturn, the ultimate limitation, death. Titus Burckhardt, in his book Alchemy, writes, "At the beginning of every spiritual realization stands death in the form of dying to the world. Consciousness must be withdrawn from the senses and turned inward, as the inner light has not yet risen. This turning away from the outward world is experienced as a nox profunda, a deep night. At the beginning of the work, the most precious material which the alchemist produces is ash, which has been divested of all passive humidity in order to be able to capture the volatile spirit. The first stage of the work corresponds to the mythological meeting of Saturn, and that Saturn, Kronos, who devoured his own children, is the divinity who through time and death causes that which becomes to return to its formless origin." End quote. So this aspect can represent a heavy but necessary dark night of the soul, where the life force is required to undergo necessary changes in order to be converted into building blocks of something new. The square of Saturn represents the pressure required to create diamonds from otherwise unpromising coal. June 9th, the Sun at 19 Gemini squares Saturn in Pisces. This is a similar aspect to that of Venus squaring Saturn. The Sun, like Venus, represents the life force, specifically life itself, while Venus represents the generative or reproductive facet of life. It's about the constant creation of forms, which is symbolized by Venus, the goddess of love and sexuality. The Sun is more like the pure principle of life, as well as the light of truth, literally enlightenment. The Sun thus represents pure spirit, unencumbered by matter. Saturn is matter, and the Sun is like the bits of pure spirit or our souls, which reside in these heavy Saturnian vehicles, our bodies, in order to exist on Earth. So the body is a kind of spacesuit enabling refined spirit to dwell in the sublunar realm of generation and corruption. Saturn is heavy, and his motion is downward. The Sun represents the lightness of spirit, whose motion is upward. Clearly, they represent two polar opposites in the universe, where they are uneasy roommates sharing the same space for a time. This aspect represents the ongoing tension between the demands of matter and that of the spirit. The square often represents a need for compromise and for making hard choices. If we want to continue living in the body, we have to accommodate its requirements, however distasteful and inconvenient they may be from an idealized spiritual perspective. That is what this, and to some extent the Venus-Saturn square, are all about. Thanks for watching. I'm Nina Gryphon, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel.